A few very dedicated women with very little money in the 30s saw the impact of the Great Depression. They particularly were interested in helping women that were impacted. They decided to become official in 1942. They formed with a $5,000 budget, 3 employees and 9 volunteers, and now we have over 200 volunteers, 500 employees, and a $44 million budget.
Didi was involved with the Los Angeles Psychiatric Service, but its resources were so limited. It required raising a lot of money. She spoke to King. They decided to step up and lead the way.
They believed in a lifeline, which they wrapped around community. They understood that small acts of kindness and care and quality services were of great value to make the entire community stronger.
As with most things that King and Didi did, they saw it through.
Didi's family gave a huge donation so that we could match the federal funding and become a community mental health center.
The Los Angeles Psychiatric Service became the Didi Hirsch Community Mental Health Center. Amazingly, Didi did all of this when she was very ill. From the time of the groundbreaking, even from well before that, through the fundraising, the growth of the organization, she herself went through great trials and tribulations.
There have been 2 periods of expansion. The first one was in the early 70s, would provide community outreach, outpatient care, residential care, the whole gamut of services. We began serving children. There was a clinic in Venice at the time. The first day it opened, there was a line down the block of people that wanted that help.
It was in the mid-70s, and I was in my mid-20s. I came and saw a therapist pretty regularly. It was really helpful to have a place to go where you didn't need much money.
For 18 months, on a weekly basis, I came to a 90-minute group therapy session, seeing that other people had the same kinds of problems that I had, that they wanted to get better, and had found their way to this place where they might get help.
The second phase was in the 90s and into the 21st century, where there were a number of well-established agencies that struggled. Particularly, these were in communities where stigma or poverty limits access. And we stepped in to preserve services.
The country's oldest suicide prevention center, located right here in Los Angeles.
One night he didn't come home. The watch commander from the Alameda Sheriff's Station came and said, "You better sit down," and told us our son was dead. So that started us off trying to get some help, and our local doctor recommended the Los Angeles Suicide Prevention Center.
When our son died, we were not listening to one another. The Suicide Prevention Center saved our marriage. We both had to learn how to listen to one another. The kindness with the way that they handle people comes out through the telephone, and it's just amazing.
All of the people that we met there were so viscerally committed to the prevention of suicide that it was something we couldn't turn away from. We wouldn't. We had to become involved.
Breaking news here. Stocks all around the world are tanking because of the crisis on Wall Street.
The market fell as if down a well, over 700 points.
We've just gone through what's called the Great Recession. The economists say it's over, but it's not over for people living in society. It's not over for people who lost their homes.
My housing counselors kept coming to me saying, people want to commit suicide. And we reached out to Didi Hirsch because we didn't know what to do with it. One of the ways that we initiated our collaboration was to get the housing counselors trained by Didi Hirsch counselors. We were taught kind of the trigger words.
Didi Hirsch Community Center held its awards today at the Beverly Wilshire Hotel.
We have 2 events a year. One is called Erasing the Stigma, where we honor people who have helped erase the stigma associated with mental illness.
It was a great honor to be the first recipient of the Didi Hirsch Annual Leadership Award.
When I first started acting, I was told not to talk about being manic depressive because producers wouldn't hire me because they would think I would go crazy on the set.
And for all these old jelly spine men we have, get your butt to a doctor, you ain't right.
A doctor said to me, "I think you're manic depressive." I wanted to throw a ticker tape parade. It had a name, and it has a treatment.
Every time you tell your story, it turns out someone else has a story, and you're lifting their burden by opening the door for them. and the other is our Alive and Running 5K that benefits our Suicide Prevention Center. When people hear about the people we've honored, or they come to our 5K and they see all the people that have been affected by suicide that are talking about it and have been able to heal over time, we are meeting our mission. The legacy of the organization lies with the commitment to people who are in need and had nowhere else to go. That continues to be something that's woven through the fabric of everything we've done. The fact that we've grown so much says several things about society. It says that it's harder and harder for mental health and substance use agencies to survive. It also says that more people in society are asking for help. And it shows that there's less stigma and that people are willing to ask for help. And there's more hope.
The great legacy really is that you never know the seeds you plant.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our event chair for the evening, Melissa Rivers.
Thank you. Good evening. Doesn't the room look so pretty tonight? Welcome to Didi Hirsch's annual Erasing the Stigma Leadership Awards. How about that video? Amazing. I'm Melissa Rivers, and I am proud to be your host for tonight's event. Last year, I was honored with the Beatrice Stern Media Award. Thank you. I was touched to receive the award from Beatrice's granddaughter, Andrea, who is actually one of my former interns. And to be honest, I was a little nervous about receiving the award from her. I just kept thinking back, like, was I mean? Was I nice? Had she found any incriminating photos? You know? And it just reminds us all one thing: be nice to your interns, because you never know when one of them is going to be your boss or presenting you with an award in public. Anyway, I am delighted to be your host tonight as Didi Hirsch celebrates 75 years of service to the community. Absolutely. 75 years. 1942. Duct tape was a new invention. A gallon of gas cost 15 cents. A new house was around $3,500. Casablanca was a hit movie, and ready for this one? Law and Order reruns were only on TV 16 times a day. That was it. But back then, Los Angeles didn't have mental health clinics. But thanks to generous supporters like Didi and King Hirsch, we are here today celebrating an agency that helps over 100,000 people a year. Yes, absolutely. Low-income children and adults with mental illness and substance use, people affected in some way by suicide, which is close to my heart. I was in college when my dad took his life, and back then, suicide wasn't something you said aloud, and definitely not in mixed company. It was something people whispered. You know, it was like the S word, all that whispering. Well, it made me really angry. So, kind of in an act of defiance, I decided that I was going to talk about my dad every chance I could get. And I am sure some people were probably uncomfortable, but in my family, making people uncomfortable seems to be a long-standing tradition. So it was super easy for me to do. There's so much stuff that people don't want to talk about. So much that makes people feel different or isolated or alone. And I look at tonight and I think, here we are, one big extended family, all speaking truths and erasing the stigma. There is nothing anymore that we can't talk about. Anxiety, depression, schizophrenia, suicide, erectile dysfunction. See, all the men right now are looking down at their feet, and all the women are looking at each other nodding. Anyway, tonight we're going to talk about mental illness and suicide without any fear or discomfort. Because in my mind, that's how you erase the stigma. Might not be so great for comedy, but it is honestly the best thing for mental health. Thank you. This year's event chair can teach us something about fearlessness. She was the first female TV sportscaster in Western Canada. She covered everything from curling to football, and also got to interview some amazing players like the world snooker champion and Wayne Gretzky. It's probably the first time Wayne Gretzky's ever been mentioned with snooker and curling in the same sentence. Anyway, I'm just saying, as a female sportscaster, Laura faced some unusual challenges. She wasn't allowed in the locker room after games, so players actually had to come out into the hall to talk to her. As the host of a weekend sports TV show, she once had to field a call from an obscene caller while live on the air. And Laura, I don't know where you, oh, you're right. Please tell me it wasn't my Uncle Lou. Another time, she actually had to do a story when her father bought a national hockey team. I'm sure it was awkward, but she handled it with tact. She said, "What do you say when your father buys a hockey team?" "That's great, Dad. I hope they don't suck." Like, what do you say? In Los Angeles, she won many Golden Mike Awards, interviewing everyone from a wife dealing with her husband's depression to the Dalai Lama. But these days, she runs a family foundation and is an occasional contributor to KUSC's Arts Alive. She has been on the board of Didi Hirsch since 1999. This is her first year chairing this event. Please welcome Laura Ornest.
Thank you. Thank you, Melissa. Thank you very much. And good evening and welcome. I really am so grateful you are all here supporting. I can't read the teleprompters. Okay, I'll read my notes. It's going too fast. You're all here supporting Didi Hirsch's life-changing services. I'm especially grateful to our leadership co-chairs, Nancy and Miles Rubin, Charlotte and Jeremy Fletcher, Jamie and Klaus Heidegger, Janine and Henry Lickstein, Keita and Peter Curry, Sarah Rutenberg and Andy Berman, and my husband, Rick Leslie. Okay, all right. So, seriously, you are all passionate advocates and incredibly generous supporters of Didi Hirsch in this event. We couldn't do it without you, as you know. I also want to thank the board committee and development staff. You all worked so hard to make this night a success. Yeah. So, it strikes me that we sit in the same ballroom where one of the most glamorous events in the world is held every year, the Golden Globes. Our sparkle and glow and our reward come from the healing and courage and hope given by our 75-year-old organization. I joined the board of Didi Hirsch around 19 years ago because members of my family suffer from mental illnesses. They didn't need the services of Didi Hirsch because they had the financial resources to get help. Talk therapy, psychiatric therapy, in some cases, electroshock therapy. But even with the best help available, it's been an extremely difficult and painful journey for them and for those of us who love them. So how do you deal with it? Well, I talked about it, telling the truth that felt ugly and shameful at times. It was scary and embarrassing. When to step in, when not to, what to do, how much can I do anything? But I've seen people get hope and dignity from a place where there was none. And I've seen miracles, truly, thanks to therapy, medication, and I might offer the power of love, the mysterious power of love. It's truly a privilege to be part of this wonderful agency. The board members are humble and hardworking and open about their experiences with mental illness. Thank you for your courage and support. And this is the purpose of nights like this, to spread the word that knowledge, understanding, and an open heart can make all the difference. Melissa alluded to my interview with the Dalai Lama. It was a daunting prospect. What do you ask the Dalai Lama when you have 5 minutes? And I don't mean to simplify what he said, but on the issues from global dilemmas to how does one deal with the daily aggravations involved in raising a child, being married, and traffic in LA, the answer was always the same, with compassion. And this is what the work done by the people here at Didi Hirsch and by you who support this work embodies. Compassion for those who are suffering with mental illness and compassion for all of us. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Laura. Now I'd like to introduce someone I have known and adored for many years. He is the vice chair of Didi Hirsch's board, easy for me to say, Didi Hirsch's board of directors, and a man of incredible energy and passion and depth. Now retired, he worked as an actuary, a management executive, a bank director, a film producer, and a math teacher. Now, I'm gonna just ask Marty, when you were a little boy, like in first and second grade, and all the other little boys were like, I want to be an astronaut, and I want to be a cowboy, did you say, like, by God, man, I'm going to be an actuary? I'm just curious. He'll answer that, whatever. He's had more careers than Elizabeth Taylor, has had husbands, and luckily only one wife. Please welcome Marty Frank.
Good evening, folks. Last year, I had the honor of announcing that the Board of Directors had decided to create a new standalone Suicide Prevention Center of Excellence. Well, we haven't gone public yet, but I wanted to update you folks, our closest friends and family, about our progress. So far, we have raised almost $7 million. And that's towards a $20 million effort, and we just made an offer on a beautiful building near Century City. Melissa, you recently toured the center that we're in. What did you think about it?
I thought the place was amazing. I thought the hot tub was maybe a little much, but truly what was amazing was the staff and the crisis counselor and how much they do in such a tiny space. And one of the things that really moved me were the memorial quilts that we saw in the video, and they're on display in the center. And when I saw a lot of the squares commemorating teenagers and soldiers and people like my dad, I mean, honestly, it truly hit home. And what I found the most fascinating, honestly, was I talked to someone who chats with teenagers, and not chat like we do, like adult humans, but chat, like, you know, on their computers, which is amazing. And they're talking about things and not like shallow stuff like who looks good and who looks bad and who's had work done, you know, like really important stuff, not like what I talk about. And these kids were pouring out their hearts and their souls on their keyboards. And as the mother of a teenage boy, I am so glad there are places like Didi Hirsch where, if God forbid he was in crisis, he could actually reach out and get help. And with calls and chats tripling, which I found amazing, this fact, since 2008 and expected to double again by 2025, it is so critical that Didi Hirsch gets the new center to expand services that we have and add new ones. So,
That's
really
great.
important.
Well, you'll hear more about our plans as time goes on. But for now, I hope everyone here will join Melissa and me in supporting our new Suicide Prevention Center of Excellence, a national resource of healing and hope. Thank you, folks.
So I'm very excited about our next presenter because I want to ask, what do Carl Reiner, Robert Altman, and Paul Mazursky have in common other than dry eyes, restless leg syndrome, and 3 other disorders no one else has ever heard of? Anyone? So easy. They all directed George Segal. When asked about his career, George prefers to say, I'm just an actor. But George Siegel isn't just an actor. From Where's Papa to The Goldbergs now on ABC, George is a movie star and an icon. And apparently he's also a real mensch. When a neighbor he barely knew asked if he would MC these awards in 2002, George answered yes right away. That's what they told me, but what I really heard was, well, not exactly right away. First he asked about the catering, like, is it kosher, is it gluten-free? I'm on a high fish oil diet, can I have it with dairy, without dairy, anyway. Since then, he's emceed 3 times. When his star on Hollywood Boulevard was unveiled in February, he made sure that Didi Hirsch and Erasing the Stigma were mentioned. Here tonight to present the Mental Health Ambassador Award to Anna Akana is the one and only George Siegel.
Thank you. So you might ask, why do I keep coming back? Because Didi Hirsch and what they do is something I believe in. Years ago, no one understood mental health, me either. All during my first marriage, I had panic attacks. And as things got better in my career, the attacks increased. I was in a play back then with Brian Bedford. It was called The Knack. And just before curtain time, I found myself curled up in the fetal position backstage, finding it hard to breathe. And Brian said to me, this had happened to him. He was standing over me at the time. And that the trick was to just get up and keep looking in his eyes, and it would be okay. And it was. And then these attacks, they started again when I was in a movie called Ship of Fools, and it was something I just had to deal with. Ironically, when I got out of that first marriage, the anxiety attacks stopped. Who knew? Linda, my second wife, turns out, was manic depressive. And we didn't realize it, or I didn't realize it, until she became delusional and unfortunately died at the age of 49 from complications of the medication. Nobody knew what was going on. So I have some experience with this disease, and that's why I'm involved with Didi Hirsch, and that's why I'm here. And boy, have things changed. YouTube didn't even exist until 2005. Now, young people like our honoree, Anna Akana, have harnessed it for good, replacing shame with hope. After her teenage sister's suicide, she posted a video, "Please don't kill yourself." 2 million people watched it. Since then, she's incorporated her loss and her depression into her comedy, a book titled So Much I Want to Tell You, and the film Riley Rewind, where the heroine travels back in time to save a suicidal classmate. Let's watch a clip from one of Anna's YouTube videos.
I suffer from depression. Antidepressants is something that my therapist has been recommending for a few years now, and something that I have never wanted to do. I've been like, I'll try St. John's wort teas and mood probiotics. Very afraid of what the side effects of medication could potentially mean. And afraid that if I take antidepressants that somehow makes my depression more real than I would like to admit. Because, you know, all you hear about are terrible side effects of medication. No one's ever just like, hey, I'm on antidepressants and it's great, out of nowhere, right? Like all you ever hear about is like, oh, I gained a ton of weight on antidepressants, or I'm really nauseous from antidepressants, or
horrible stuff has happened.
But lately, I have had a bout of depression that has sort of driven me kind of crazy and made me not a fun person to live with. Unless you're a cat, then, you know, I'm the best to live with. My therapist brought up antidepressants again and said, hey, why don't you just try it? You know, you've tried all of your herbs and whatever you've wanted to try. You know, I'm on antidepressants, my wife is on antidepressants. It's helped us tremendously. We've been on it for 10 to 15 years. You should try it. And I just got to this point where I realized, you know, I'm someone who's an advocate of suicide prevention, especially in youth. And I'm someone who is trying to abolish stigmas of mental illness. And I pay a psychologist a lot of money to help me with my life. And I'm not listening to his advice. And I haven't been listening to this part of his advice for several years. So it just all kind of clicked into place. Like, okay, this is something I should try. Maybe it'll work. Maybe it won't. But it is a solution that I could potentially try.
It's my honor to present the 2017 Mental Health Ambassador Award to Anna Akana. Anna?
Thank you, George, and thank you so much to everyone at Didi Hirsch for this recognition. My sister, Christina Maria Kana, committed suicide on Valentine's Day in 2007. She was 13 years old. Before we lost her, I would have told you that my family was completely normal. You know, I was just a typical, normal Japanese, Filipino, Irish, German, Spanish, French, English girl. And my family had moved 14 times in 20 years, so I wasn't sure if my father was in the military or running away from the law. But after that day, my family was never the same, obviously. You know, we would never again be normal. Suicide is the second leading cause of death among kids 12 to 18 years old. So knowing someone who has committed suicide is more normal than it is not. And when your little sister takes her own life, you know, the suffering is immense. You know, your heart just completely breaks and your eyes weep lakes and your emotions rage and it feels like it's never going to end. And like Melissa said, you know, people with no personal experience with suicide usually don't know what to say to us. They're so afraid of saying the wrong thing that sometimes they say nothing at all. And they don't know how to talk about all the stuff going on inside of us that they can't understand and they have no frame of reference for. But if we don't talk about suicide, people who have lost someone and those who have attempted feel even more isolated and alone. And that is why I write about my sister and talk about my grief and my depression, my antidepressant prescription, my boyfriend's relief that I'm on antidepressants. And I post it online to 2 million strangers who are somehow down to hear what I have to say. Because doing that really helps me figure myself out. But I'm lucky, you know, I have friends that I can talk to, I have family I can talk to, and my sister did not have that. She didn't have anyone she felt like she could open up to. But today, there are things like Didi Hirsch's chat services, which are essential when you're 12 to 18 years old. No one calls anymore. And for a lot of them, suicidal feelings, depression, and anxiety aren't something they want to talk about with their parents. When they want to reach out, chatting online or texting is the easiest form of communication for them. So think about that the next time you tell your kid to get off the computer. Every day, Didi Hirsch's chat services talks to dozens of teens in distress and helps keep them safe. And if my sister had been able to chat or text with someone that day, I don't know, things might have turned out differently. And if they had, I probably wouldn't be here accepting this award, but she did not, so here I am. So thank you so much for this honor, and I accept it on behalf of my sister. If you are a survivor of suicide or living with any other mental illness, just know that you are not alone. We are all alone together. Thank you.
That was amazing. For nearly 2 decades, Didi Hirsch has made giant strides in the world of community mental health. Under the leadership of its small-statured, big-hearted poet warrior CEO, the agency has more than doubled in size and reputation. Nationally known as a mental health and suicide prevention advocate, Dr. Keita Curry serves on national steering committees and behavioral health boards. She has testified before the state legislature and was just appointed to the Los Angeles County Mental Health Commission. She's got a couple awards too. You don't expect the CEO of a major mental health nonprofit to speak so openly about her family's experience with poverty, domestic violence, and homelessness. Even fewer would talk about their own experience with depression. Well, Keita is no ordinary CEO. She made Didi Hirsch her mission of erasing the stigma intensely personal and a call to action truly for all of us. Please welcome the extraordinary Dr. Keita S. Curry.
Thank you. Was that about me? So in the video tonight, you saw how extraordinary King and Didi Hirsch were. And the legacy continues in their children, their grandchildren, and their great-grandchildren. And many of them are here tonight from as far away as Washington, D.C. And I want to thank you for moving the vision of Didi Hirsch forward. Thank you so much. Watching the video of Carrie Fisher was bittersweet. We honored her in 2002, and she presented an award later. But Carrie wasn't just a person who publicly advocated for mental health. She did privately too. So when she turned 45, she told her friends, "Don't give me a birthday present, make a donation to Didi Hirsch." There are a lot of memorable moments from these awards, and one would be Carrie, who could, with her dark humor, illuminate mental illness. And another for me was quirky Dustin Hoffman. He was pacing on the stage and throwing his index cards down as he finished with them. I thought, oh my God, where is he going? And then he showed us. He told us about the time when he was with his first girlfriend and saw her for the first time naked. She had to explain her scars and the depression that led her to them. You might think that when we get up here and Dustin or Carrie told their stories that it came easily, but that's not always the case. You wonder, is my boss gonna look at me differently tomorrow, or is my colleague, like the brilliant Ellen Sachs had, going to say later, "Oh, I wouldn't have had dinner with you if I knew you had schizophrenia." And for myself, the hardest time I ever had talking about myself was when I met a man I was wild about. And I had to tell him that shortly before I met him, I had attempted suicide. I don't know which of us took the bigger risk. He'd lost his father to suicide when he was 16. I also attempted suicide when I was a teenager, but that's a lot easier to talk about because people tend to dismiss teenage suicide attempts as if it's just youthful folly. It isn't. As Anna said, suicide is the second leading cause of death also among 15 to 24-year-olds. And for every teen that attempts suicide and dies, there are over 100 more that attempt and luckily live, but their risk increases with every attempt. It doesn't help that health professionals, many of them, don't really know what to do or say when it comes to suicide. When I changed my GP, I told the new one that I was taking an antidepressant, and he said, to stop smoking? I was like, no, I have depression. That was the end of the conversation. And surveys of mental health professionals are really disturbing because they show that most people who go through graduate school and become therapists say that they've had very little or no training in suicide. But there is something to do about that, and Didi Hirsch is doing it. Right now, we've joined with other advocates up in Sacramento trying to get a bill passed that would require just a modest amount of training in suicide prevention when you go to graduate school. The first time we put that bill forward, it died in the legislature. The second time, Governor Brown vetoed it. Now we're there a third time. We've narrowed the goal. We're just trying to get the law passed to require psychologists to have modest training. And when we win, because we will eventually, we'll move on to the other therapists. We're also doing something to provide tools to therapists. We developed a group, a very innovative group for people who have attempted suicide. They are the loneliest and they feel the most ashamed. And after we developed this group and it was accepted on a national resource center, we made it available for free on our internet. We knew therapists were looking for tools, but we didn't know how desperately. Almost 1,000 people have requested that curriculum from all over the world and all 50 states. And New York State, Georgia, and Oklahoma have now brought us out to train their mental health professionals how to implement this curriculum. And last week, Australia called. Everybody wants to go to give that training. We couldn't do those things with the funding we get from the government because it doesn't allow for the development of new techniques and the evaluation of them. But we can do them because of you. Thank you for helping us arrive here at 75 years as a remarkable organization, and thank you for helping us move forward into the future. I'm not still standing here just so you'll keep clapping. I'm doing it because we have a tradition. I would like everybody in the room who is themselves personally at some point had a mental health challenge like George's panic attack, someone with attention deficit disorder, bipolar disorder, depression, you name it, anybody that at some point has had to deal with a mental health challenge because they affect almost all of us. Please stand. You're going to make me cry for being so brave. And now, would everybody else who knows someone who's faced one of those challenges please stand? It's all of us. Thank you very much. Now we're going to take a break for dinner. So enjoy yourselves and enjoy talking with each other.